Hello, everybody. I'm going to get started. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. I'm Jennifer Grossman, the Coordinator of Research and Evaluation for the Higher Education Policy Commission. Thank you for attending our session, Leading Through Turbulent Times. Please feel free to add your questions throughout the presentation by using the session chat box to the right of your screen, and we'll address your questions at the end of the presentation. And with that, I would like to introduce our speaker. Cynthia Pursley, PhD, RN, FAAN, is currently Senior Director of the Health Sciences at West Virginia Higher Education Policy Commission. In this role, she is charged with identifying needs across the healthcare training and practice landscape and working to devise solutions by encouraging stakeholder collaboration, targeted grant making, and modifications to education and training programs. Dr. Pursley provides oversight for a variety of rural health programs, as well as grants and scholarship initiatives, setting programmatic vision and expectations while advising program directors and participants. Dr. Pursley's career in West Virginia has spanned over 25 years of service to the state and citizens. Dr. Pursley spent 20 years at West Virginia University, eventually earning the rank of tenured professor in the School of Nursing, serving as Associate Dean of Graduate Practice Programs prior to her departure in 2013. While at WVU, Dr. Pursley had a faculty practice and rural health clinic for over 15 years, providing prenatal care to rural women as a nurse practitioner, and served as the co-director of the HRSA-funded West Virginia Rural Health Research Center. In 2013, Dr. Pursley took on the role of CEO of Highland Hospital and other affiliated Highland companies, providing strategic leadership to this behavioral health system for 7 years. Dr. Pursley holds a BSN from East Stroudsburg University, an MSN in perinatal nursing from the University of Pennsylvania, a PhD in nursing and health and social policy from the University of Pennsylvania, and a postgraduate certificate from West Virginia University as a women's health nurse practitioner. Dr. Pursley is a proud alumnus of the Robert Wood Johnson Executive Nurse Fellows Program, a national nurse executive leadership program. She is also a graduate of Leadership America. Dr. Pursley's textbook, Team Leadership and Partnering in Nursing and Healthcare, is used across the world by health science students developing team leadership skills. We are excited to have Dr. Pursley here today, and now I'd like to turn it over to her.
Well, thank you, Jennifer, for that kind introduction. And thank you all for being here today. I'd like to just start by saying thank you to the Higher Education Policy Commission Student Services Division for their extraordinary leadership in putting together this virtual Student Success Summit. What a wonderful lineup of presentations and presenters and a diverse group of participants. I've been in a couple of sessions already this morning, and they've just been fabulous with participation from national leaders to our local students. And I couldn't be happier to be here with you today. And while there were a lot of dark clouds that came out of COVID, the ability to do a summit like this with over 800 people registered, from participants and presenters from across the nation, as well as right here in West Virginia. This is certainly a silver lining in that those dark clouds of COVID. So thank you all for being here. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk to you about leadership in turbulent times. And regardless of your role that you come here with today, you're a leader. And you're leading small groups, large groups, you're leading clubs and communities, and you're leading colleges and universities and K through 12 schools. You're leading others through these turbulent times that we've been in. Certainly, I've had some experience in leading in turbulent times. You heard in my bio that I ran a psychiatric hospital system for 7 years. So I've had a little bit of experience with turbulence that I couldn't really escape. But certainly none of us have ever had a leadership experience in a situation as far-reaching as COVID. And this pandemic that we're slowly recovering from has really challenged all of us and all of our leadership skills. In fact, I think if we were to try and invent a crisis that was so unique and diabolically designed to undermine the foundations of traditional education institutions, it would certainly look very much like the COVID-19 global pandemic. So just think about that. Education institutions, and particularly higher education institutions, offer a lot of things to a lot of people. Preparation for a vocation or a profession, many rites of passage, regardless of where we are in the education system, and of our thinking. But really, what is at the core of what we offer in education is closeness and really a sense of community. And so whether you're in a K through 12 school community or a small liberal arts college or a Division I powerhouse, where you've promised people that you will rock the rafters with cheering crowds, what we're all drawn to in education is that sense of community and closeness. And really, that's what the pandemic took away from us. And it did it without any warning. So we encountered a virus that made closeness and community pathological. We were all sent home last March on very little notice, and we all had to develop our new normal. I don't know about anyone else, but I hate that term, new normal. How about you guys? The very little notice that we got led to very traumatic times for learners, for teachers, for parents, for faculty. Learners were forced out of their laboratories and their classrooms where they were learning with peers and teachers and professors, away from their advisors and their supporters with whom they discussed their future. In colleges, they couldn't live together, they couldn't dine together, and in any school, they couldn't study or play together. These were all banned activities during the pandemic to try and curb the spread. So we lost so many milestone activities that are so important to our mental health, to our social development. And all of those milestones, like proms and Greek activities and graduation, they were all banned. And we were forced into distance learning. And that wasn't exactly what we all signed up for. And it isn't necessarily suited, as we all know, to many populations. So teachers who had to sometimes within a week get ready for teaching and learning online. Wanted to show you this YouTube video. I'm sure some of you have seen it, of a kindergarten teacher who was trying to engage her 4 and 5-year-olds, and just what she was able to do with those children who were online learning for their first experiences with school. I apologize if there's a commercial at the beginning of this YouTube video. I haven't figured out how to cut it, but hopefully you'll be able to see it.
Don't like
Yeah, there's the commercial.
Whatever you have at home, Knorr sides can turn nutritious veggies into mouth-watering meals. Veggies taste amazing with Knorr. The
So
number
Dr. Priestley, we actually cannot see the video.
Okay.
and 2, that will also make 4. I see 4 and 0, that is 4. What kind of pictures do we see over
So
on
I
our
believe
number 4?
there's actually a button on the bottom, if you look in the center, that looks like a little square with a triangle in it. You can actually put the YouTube video through there, and then it should play for you.
Okay, so the mini button says what?
It's a square button, and it has a little triangle on it. Can you see that? Do you have that? If not, I can see if I can.
I do not. Can you see if
Okay.
you can play it?
Yeah, let me see if I can pull that.
And then I'll push play.
I probably will have to do it on my end. Let me see if I.
Okay.
Can you actually just do you see the chat? Can you just put the link in the chat, because it blocks out my screen when I try to type it.
Okay, hold on. I just need to go out of my screen share. And back into you. Sorry.
No,
There we go. And put the link in the chat. Hold on. Sorry, guys, as we work out these little kinks. Okay, it is there.
The number 4. Oh, Oh, I see Bryn is holding up 2 and 2. That will also make 4. I see 4 and 0. That is 4. What kind of pictures do we see over on our number 4? Can you raise your hand?
Jennifer, you're muted.
If you can just, sorry, I clicked on the wrong button. If you can just mute it and see if the echo goes away when I redo that,
Okay.
so it's not piping through.
Jennifer, for your help with that. So in watching that video, my heart just simultaneously soars with pride that a teacher would go that far to teach their students. And also it kind of breaks at the pressure that she must feel in order to make sure her students are learning. And so I'm having a hard time sharing at the same time. Okay, Jennifer, hang in with me, guys. Oh, hold on. Now I can share. So think about the pressure that she feels in trying to make sure that her students are learning. And as parents, we felt some of these same pressures, right? So how many nights have we all stayed up worrying? Are our children learning? Or how are we going to juggle everything? Working at home, caretaking, and again, making sure that those kids learn. I laughed so hard about a story that I read on Facebook of a mom who had 2 small children, one in 1st grade and one in kindergarten. And she was showing pictures of how she set up her kitchen table with their computers and their headphones and cubbies for all of their materials. And she made sure that she had a plastic tablecloth to catch any spills or stray markers. By the end of the day, her one son in 1st grade was asking Alexa how to spell words on his spelling test. and the other was playing under the table with dinosaurs that he had hidden under the tablecloth. The benches were turned over, the cubbies were destroyed, and the plastic tablecloth was shredded by anxious little hands. And I just had to laugh, and you just have to. I don't know how many times my husband and I have said to each other that we're so thankful that we don't have school-age children during that pandemic. I will say, though, that our third-year medical student daughter learned brain anatomy and physiology online, so I hope she never decides to be a neurosurgeon, because I'm not sure how much she actually knows about the brain. But these are stories of families who have means and privilege. And what about those learners who were dependent upon school for safety and for food and connection and caring? This pandemic has really traumatized everyone, and it's not been an equal opportunity traumatizer, that's for sure. The pandemic has also been an unprecedented time for leaders at all levels. I recently saw an article in the Chronicle of Higher Education that inspired this slide that was entitled, "Welcome to the College Presidency, and oh, by the way, the house is on fire." Leadership, regardless of the level, and we know that we're all leaders at different levels, the last year and a half has been has really changed leadership in fundamental ways, and none of us has begun to quantify that. Critical decisions were made without a lot of information in many cases, and have been made by every leader across the world. The big job of every leader over the last year and a half, regardless of their level, was crisis management. And most of the time, we've been flying it as we are building it. Education seems to be the place where all of the pressures of the pandemic seem to converge. Remember that sense of community that I talked about earlier? Educational institutions, regardless of the level, are communities, and they face the same pressures as the rest of the world. We're dealing with the COVID pandemic, science made political, racial injustice and inequality, gender disparities, as well as the economic downturn. Everyone in our community is dealing with these in their own way, and education leaders may be dealing with these issues personally, in addition to their leadership roles in education. So I spent some time already this morning trying to set the scene for what we'll talk about for the rest of our time together. We've experienced a collective trauma, and we need to know a bit more about some of the softer leadership skills and about trauma-informed leadership to be able to be successful as we move forward into this new normal. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time for the rest of our time together this morning on some of these features of leadership, because they are going to be the ones that carry us through into the future. So the Center for Creative Leadership, where I've had the privilege to learn from some of the best, has identified through many years of research with leaders at all levels that there are about 10 characteristics of what they call a good leader. My view is that these are also the characteristics that will help leaders to overcome this turbulence that we've been going through, and any turbulence from a pandemic to a hostile takeover. Leadership characteristics, if we develop them and if we practice them, become what we can fall back on for success in these trying times. So let's look at some of these. We won't discuss all of them today, but each of them are important. So the first thing that I always think about in terms of leadership, and this is certainly one that we can fall back on, is self-awareness, knowing yourself as a leader. One of the most important things that a leader can do is to be self-aware. This includes understanding our values, which leads to our must-haves and our never moments, and values, and understanding our values is essential. Practicing agility and being able to turn on a dime and build it as we fly it has never been more important. And showing gratitude and empathy can't be underestimated in a trauma-informed model. So we're going to delve into some of these. So the first one I want to talk about are values and integrity. Integrity is really being about being honest, trustworthy, and being reliable. It's about doing what you say you'll do, owning up to your mistakes, and not making excuses. Integrity in leaders leads to better performance by the team. There's a lot of research that supports this. And why is that? Because when there's integrity in leaders, when they're being honest and trustworthy and reliable, that leads to trust among the team and also leads to more positive workplace behaviors. Others want to follow leaders with integrity. Think about your own life. You want to be around leaders who are honest, trustworthy, and reliable. And there's no more important time for this than a crisis to be able to demonstrate integrity in leadership. Understanding our leadership values is intimately linked to integrity. Our values in our life guide our actions, right? Organizational values guide an organization's actions. How many of you have found yourself in a situation where your values are being violated? Did it make it harder to act with integrity, to be honest, and to be trustworthy? Did it make it harder for you to perform as a member of the team or to lead your team? I know I've been in these situations, and they've led me to some very important reflection and to make some very important decisions. In fact, in my last position, I found that my leadership integrity was being challenged every day, and that was the decision that I made. That was what made me make the decision to leave that position. So really important and life-changing decisions are made by depending upon your values. My values have always won. To be totally transparent with you, my values, which I've honed over many, many years, are integrity, compassion, accountability for myself and for and by others, respect, and excellence. I try to live by these values every day. I expect others to live by their values, and that's a really important lesson in values. Not everyone shares the same values, but we all fall back on our values in times of crisis and turbulence. So this is an important time for us to sit back and to say, what are my values? Identify them, say them, write them down. And if you know your values, you can certainly fall back on them. I'd like to also talk a little bit about leadership gratitude and vulnerability. Remember, we're talking about soft skills related to leadership. Brene Brown, who's a researcher at the University of Houston and is a prolific author. She's written books like The Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, Dare to Lead, which is my personal favorite. She says that leadership and vulnerability intersect. And never are we more vulnerable than in a time of chaos, uncertainty, crisis like we've been. Brene Brown says that part of practicing vulnerability is to have a strong gratitude muscle. Gratitude allows us to see the best in the other people around us and how they help us and do everything better. Leadership gratitude is an important leadership skill, and especially around this time. I practice gratitude whenever I can with my team, whether it's a simple thank you, whether it's time away from work to celebrate accomplishments, a lunch out, an email to them to tell them that I'm proud to work with them. It doesn't matter the form. It's about letting others know that we see the best in them, and that makes us better. Leaders who practice gratitude help us all to focus on our success. And what better time to show gratitude than in a time when we are all under so much pressure and everything seems so uncertain. During the last 16 months, I've spent a lot of time with college campuses working on COVID issues. And it hasn't been fun. It hasn't been fun for anyone. When we finally finished up our vaccine distribution, I'll talk about that in a little bit, I sent an email to people to thank them. I can't believe the response that I got from that email which was really just meant to thank them for what they did and for the fact that they actually saved lives. Gratitude really is so important to people now. Closely linked to gratitude is leadership empathy. And this is an important thing when we talk about trauma-informed leadership in a few minutes. There are 4 elements of empathy that are essential for leaders to practice at these times of turbulence. We try to see the world through others' eyes when we're practicing empathy. We practice listening. We appreciate them as human beings who are experiencing their own trauma. We recognize feelings that they have, whatever they may be, and we communicate that understanding to our team members. So think about a time when you've heard a leader say, I hear you and I appreciate your perspective. I've been there, or I understand, and how that made you feel as a member of a team and a willing participant in that leader's work. When people are experiencing a challenge or dealing with a difficult situation, they're not looking for a magic response that will fix everything. They're looking for someone to hear them. I'll tell you a personal story. When I have a leadership issue, I sometimes will take it home and talk it over with my husband. What I'm really looking for is someone to listen, someone who doesn't have a dog in the fight, to tell me they understand how I feel. My husband sometimes tries to fix the problem, and that's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is compassion and empathy. I want to feel heard. Many of our team members feel that same way in times of crisis and turbulence. So this is where that connection to your team happens. If we stop long enough from putting out fires to demonstrate empathy, we'll help our team through those difficult times. Earlier, I also talked about agility as a leader. In times of crisis and turbulence, we need to be agile. Remember what I said? Building it as we're flying it. We need to be able to be flexible and adapt our behaviors sometimes on the fly. If COVID didn't do that to all of us, I don't know what will. Personal example of this, I started my job at the Higher Education Policy Commission 2 days before the governor announced the stay-at-home order. My vision and plan coming into my new job and my mindset on the day that I started was one where I would take some time, I would learn all the players, I would tour campuses, I would understand healthcare workforce needs and education across the state. I would help grantees expand their programs and improve scholarship opportunities for students. Instead, on day 2 of my work here, Chancellor Tucker looked at me in a cabinet meeting, and as the only person in the agency with a healthcare background, she said to me, "What do we do?" I had to flip my mindset, my mental model, my sense making, and really get information and data quickly, collaborate, experiment, learn, unlearn, relearn many times over the last 16 months. For many months, I worked with campus leaders to make their environment safe, to assure that especially health sciences students who we needed so desperately during this pandemic were able to continue and complete their education. And for 6 months, I spent my days in the National Guard drill hall working with the Joint Interagency Task Force on vaccine distribution and distributing over 56,000 vaccine doses to our college campuses. You know what? It wasn't what I expected when I came into this job, but I feel like I'm a better leader for it. I was able to still learn the players, to understand the needs of the state, to help grantees and collaborate across boundaries like I never did before. Who would have thought I would be sitting with the National Guard working on and strategizing related to vaccine distribution? So I led, just not the way that I had expected. I keep thinking about that old saying that mortals plan and God laughs. And I think that that is perfectly an appropriate saying in a time of crisis. So I'd like to finish up our discussion of leadership characteristics, those soft leadership characteristics, before we go into a discussion of trauma-informed leadership with a little bit about leadership courage. You know, we've talked about vulnerability, we've talked about gratitude, to lead by our values, and to be agile. All of these things demonstrate courage. In a crisis like the pandemic we're coming out of, we have all had to be courageous to not know things as leaders. And we had to be willing to say that and to recognize that each time we navigate through those turbulent waters, we learn and we get braver and we become more courageous. So I want to put this together and talk about trauma-informed leadership. As I said before, we've all experienced a collective trauma over the last 16 months, but we've also all experienced individual traumas as well. We may have lost jobs, we may have lost our dreams, we may have lost loved ones during the pandemic. Good leaders will recognize these and use trauma-informed practices in their leadership to be successful. Many of you have studied trauma-informed care or trauma-informed education. See, there are a lot of counselors and social workers and educators here, and we've all learned the same concepts that we can use in trauma-informed leadership. Those concepts of emotional and physical safety, empowerment, voice and choice, trust and transparency, and collaboration and mutuality are the concepts that underpin everything about trauma-informed leadership. It really involves understanding that there's an emotional world that's rumbling around just below the surface for everyone. Students, parents, faculty, leaders respond to events according to their experience in the past and their experiences in the present. Trauma-informed leadership recognizes and honors those emotional issues, those scars that people may struggle with. Going back to Brené Brown, she recently said that in order to empathize with someone's experience, you must be willing to believe them as they see it and not how you imagine their experience to be. This is a key part of trauma-informed leadership. So remember those leadership characteristics of empathy and vulnerability and gratitude. They all come into play here in trauma-informed leadership and allow team members to feel safe, respected, and recognized. So some of the actions that you can actually embrace during turbulent times that are trauma-informed are safety. Both physical, psychological, emotional, and social safety. You can embrace safety. You can display authentic warmth, be approachable, show that you care, be clear and consistent in your communication. People feel safe when they have consistency. Show gratitude, be non-judgmental. Remember, not everyone has had the same experiences that you've had. Stay calm, avoid reactive responses. All of these lead to a feeling of safety. And check on your team. They may not be doing okay. Promote that sense of safety in everything that you do as a leader. The next one is empowerment, and you can facilitate empowerment in any team that you're leading. You can do that by accepting different ways of doing the work, acknowledging and validating the knowledge that your team members possess. While holding your team accountable, you can be constructive, you can be compassionate, you can acknowledge their hard work. You can listen, gain a deep understanding of situations, you can offer choices, and you can honor those choices. You can also be trustworthy, and that's a concept that we've talked a little bit about already. Be accountable for actions, be accountable for the outcomes, communicate transparently, be predictable and consistent. You hear a theme here, right? Seek the answers that you don't have, acknowledge your own strengths and weaknesses and how they impact others, and be transparent. All of those lead to the perception of integrity and trustworthiness. And you can also be a collaborator, be dependable, follow through, help others understand trauma-informed concepts. It will improve everyone's experience. So I want to leave you with one last thing before we open up for questions. And I want to say that no matter what level of leader you are, you're a student leading a club, a teacher leading a classroom, a professor leading a department, a parent leading a family, a president leading an institution, we're all human. And we need to take care of ourselves. This is something that we often forget as leaders. And you know, all those traumas that we just talked about, we've experienced them too. So leaders aren't immune. I know we haven't flown on airplanes for a while, but if you remember back when we did, each time before takeoff in an airplane, there's a safety demonstration. And each time the crew reminds you to do what? In case of emergency, put on your own mask first before assisting others. The urge is always for us to put our children, our spouses, our parents, our loved ones, our students before ourselves. We can take care of other people more than we take care of ourselves. And this is true of leaders. Leaders emerge and grow because of our passion for helping and serving others. And it's very easy to forget about our own well-being, our own balance, and our own mental state along the way. And this year, the importance of putting on our own mask first. I don't mean to make a pun, but it was crucial. So you'll be a much better leader in turbulent times if you can take care of yourself. I'm going to give you a few tips in terms of taking care of yourself as a leader, maybe some examples that you can take on. First one, I always tell everyone, and I try to tell myself as well, because I need this reminder as well, give yourself some grace. Remember that grace and gratitude that we talked about offering others, give it to yourself as well. You know, there'll be Saturdays when all you can do is watch Schitt's Creek on Netflix, and that's okay. You got to tell yourself that's okay, if that's what you need at that moment. Keep your energy levels up. People management and leadership can be the most rewarding thing in your life, but it can also be the most draining. It requires a lot of skills like empathy and listening and delegation and coaching, and all of them need oodles of energy in order to be good at. You need reserves of energy for when people need you, and you need to proactively keep your energy levels topped up. So respect your need for sleep. Whether you need 8 hours or 6 hours or just wind down before you go to bed, or you can fall asleep instantly, listen to your body and be true to it. Carve out your time, the time that you need to be all things to all people all the time. Close down your emails when you need to. I have to remember that. I always say I'm a recovering hospital CEO who is on call 24/7. And so I work at odd times. But let people know that you're taking a break. They'll respect you for it. I now have a tagline on my email signature that many of you have seen others put on as well. It allows people to know that I don't expect them to respond to me on evenings, weekends, or holidays, and that perhaps I won't either. I'm trying to get better at that. But I'm trying to bring my best self to work and home, and I hope that they will too. A simple fix might be moving the dial on caffeine. You know, it's a crutch that lots of us have used. There's no need to go cold turkey, but maybe if you're struggling to keep things straight or to work or to sleep at night, just have one fewer coffee or diet soda, or take one day off a week from that. Start with easy steps and then go further. One of the things that I talk about a lot is self-reflection, not rumination. So, you know, we continually learn as leaders. It's a lifelong marathon. It's kind of like parenting. You know, you kind of try to make the best, most informed decision with the information that you have at the time. But when situations don't go your way, a lot of times leaders will ruminate on those situations. And really what we need is we need to be able to think them through with a clear head, to do some reflection, and to give ourselves some conclusions that will help us when we face a similar situation in the future. So I always bring it back to two questions when I'm reflecting. And that is, what can I do differently in the future? And in order to do that, whatever that is, what do I need to learn or what do I need to practice? There's that fine line between reflection and rumination. If we're on a lifelong journey, we need to be positive and seek to understand why something happened and how we can make it better in the future, and not focus on that situation that's in the past itself. I have on here exercise. I think one of the most unavoidable facts about leadership is being pulled in lots of different directions at all times. And that's what makes it challenging and exciting, and that's what keeps our energy up. But it can also lead to that frazzled feeling at the end of the day, which can be really hard to shift out of. Exercise is a great reset switch and rebooting your brain chemistry and leveling off those highs and lows of your brain's frazzled state. That's not a technical term, frazzled state, but basically it's overstimulation. So This is what I find works for me as a leader. Prioritizing exercise. I schedule it just like I schedule everything else, so that gives me some control. I don't allow it to fall to the bottom of my to-do list when I'm busy, because that's when I need it most. So I make it a priority and a non-negotiable part of my life. I also make it a habit. So even if I can only do something for a few minutes, I do it. Exercise has to become a habit to be an effective de-stressor. And I try to enjoy it. And I often tell people that I hate it every moment that I'm doing it, but I feel so good after I'm finished. One of the things you can do in terms of enjoying it is not use what everyone else's concept of good exercise is. Just because your colleague goes to the gym, that doesn't mean that's for you. Maybe you walk. If it's not great for your well-being if you have to be dragged kicking and screaming to do it. Choose something that you actually enjoy. And the last thing is mindfulness, and we don't have time to do a mindfulness class today, but just one hint about mindfulness, something that I learned is called the purposeful pause. And it's just pausing to be present in the moment, and that can be while you're drinking your coffee in the morning, before you get out of bed, where you just lay and think about how you feel, just being present in that moment. Or maybe when you walk between your meetings, you don't do emails, you don't do texts, you just think about what's going on around you. So hopefully these are some tips that you can use for leadership self-care. How can you build it into your life? I will tell you a funny story that I just find to be brilliant. My daughter goes to the University of Virginia. The president there, Jim Ryan, he is a runner. He runs every morning at 7 a.m. and he has a club. It's called Run with Jim. And if you're just walking along and you see President, he invites you to join him. And it might be for a block. It might be for his whole run. But it's a way that he de-stresses, and it's a way that he also stays connected. So think about how you can build these opportunities into your own leadership life. So I'm going to stop here and with my favorite quote, which is from Superman. And it's, "You're much stronger than you think you are, trust me." And some cute kids too. So I hope you've learned some skills and strategies, or maybe have some newly developed confidence. Maybe you have some new things to think about, but the confidence that you have to deal with these turbulent times. My favorite coach at my gym says this every day: you can do hard things. And I've come to believe that. So I'm going to stop there and open up for questions. I'm also going to hopefully stop screen sharing if I can. And come back to being able to see everyone.
Well, thank you for this fabulous conversation. And actually, I see Jeff said, do you know what the best type of exercise is? It's the one you will do. And I'm very guilty of doing that as well. I decide to take something up and then I never actually do it. And so I end up doing nothing. So, thank you for that. Please feel free to put some questions in the chat for Dr. Pursley. I actually was thinking, as we start going back to the new normal, right? What does that mean in terms of leadership? Do we revert back to how we were? Do we stay how we are? Like, what exactly does that look like?
So that's a great question, Jennifer. Thank you for asking that. I think that leadership is forever changed, just like everything else around us. I think that we are going to have to use these softer skills in leadership as we move forward. Like I said, we've all been traumatized, and we've got to be thinking about how, as leaders, we are using these softer skills to lead people who have experienced trauma. And so I think that there is a new normal for leadership as well. And we'll see how that plays out.
The things that we can do as, obviously we're all leaders in whatever capacity, and we are all led by people. Is there something that we can do as non-leaders to actually help our leaders be better at that role?
So you're breaking up a little bit, Jennifer, but I think you're asking if there's something that we can do to help young leaders. And one of the things that I believe most about in leadership development is that you should have great mentors, and that you should be able to identify those skills that you need to develop in leadership. Find the people around you who have those skills, and that might be people in very interesting places who can become mentors for you. So I'll tell you, I ran for about 6 years when I was at WVU. I ran a leadership development program for statewide leadership development program for nurses. And one of the things that we had built into our program was they did a skills assessment, a leadership skills assessment, and then they built a plan around how they were going to build those skills that they had identified a need for in their life. And then we helped them to find a mentor who could help them develop those skills. And I had someone who was afraid of talking to people. And so we hooked her up with, this is a very strange place where you find mentors, like I said, we hooked her up with a Mary Kay Cosmetics person, a very successful saleswoman, because she was talking to people all the time and she was selling them something. And this nurse was going to become a manager on a unit. She was going to need to sell people things all the time, not Mary Kay Cosmetics, but she was going to need to be able to sell policies and procedures and ways to work. And so she learned so much from that Mary Kay Cosmetics representative about how you interact with people. And so look for mentors and be mentors. So all of us who have had the privilege of having mentors in the past, we need to look at how we can mentor others. And recently I was contacted by someone who had just finished her MBA in healthcare administration. She went to high school with my son, so she's 25 years old. And she wanted to break into healthcare administration, and she reached out to me. And I thought, what a wonderful, first of all, how brave of her. And second of all, what a wonderful opportunity for me to mentor her. And so we have developed a mentoring relationship. And in fact, when I told my family I was going to have drinks with her the other night, they thought I had lost my mind. But really, we have developed this relationship, and she's now starting a new job in healthcare administration, and I'll be there to support her. And we can all do that.
And I apologize if I'm coming in a little bit broken up because I hear it on my end as well. So hopefully you can hear me because the question has come in. Have you found that there is validity into the old saying, you can accomplish more with honey than you can with vinegar? How does this apply to leadership? Or should there be a balance of honey and vinegar?
Thank you. And thanks, Jeff, for that question. You can talk about honey and vinegar. You can talk about a carrot and a stick. It all means the same thing. And I do think that there probably is a need for balance. I go back to my values, and one of my values is accountability. And so I hold myself accountable, and I also try to hold others accountable. And I let them know that I will hold them accountable. And so I do that with honey, but there may be some vinegar in the end if others aren't accountable. So I think it really does depend on the situation. It depends on your personality, but it also depends, I think, on your values a bit as well. Resources and supports that leaders can have to be able to become more of an empathetic leader, to have are there connections that they can seek out to facilitate their own growth and become that type of leader? So I think the question was, are there supports that people can use to learn to be a more empathic leader? Is that right, Jennifer? Close. Okay. I think that there are a lot of things out there that we can read. I'm a huge reader, and I'm reading all the time. I have a library of leadership books. I think, if you've identified a leadership skill that you need, the best thing you can do is start by reading about it. Find someone who has that skill and learn how to emulate them, learn how they learned to use that skill. I mentioned Brene Brown. There's lots of other people who are prolific authors on leadership. There are podcasts on leadership and TED Talks. And, I think we can take something away from each of it and just make small changes in our own leadership practice that will help us be more empathic, more genuine. I heard a term, I saw someone use a term in the chat box that was authentic warmth. I love that term. There's also a term that's kind of the opposite of that, and that's armored leadership. You have your leadership armor on. I think that's very opposite to the way we're talking about and approaching leadership. And, as we come out of a pandemic, we're talking about using the authentic warmth piece of ourselves as opposed to our armored leadership skills. I think going back to your question, I think reading, watching, observing others, surrounding yourself with others who have the skills that you want to try to emulate are important ways that you can learn to be a good leader.
I encourage everybody, if you have questions, we are coming toward the end of time. So I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to ask their questions. I guess as I think about, leading and having led people, it can be challenging, especially, through a challenging time or with personalities that are very different than yours. What are the greatest challenges that somebody could have in terms of leadership during a trauma such as this? And then how do you actually go about getting around those challenges?
So Jennifer, you broke up on all of that for me. So I didn't get the question. Do you want to maybe type it in the box?
Sure, I will do that right now.
Thanks. As Jennifer is typing, I just want to say thank you all for being here with us today, and I hope that you have a great rest of the conference. I can't wait to hear some of the sessions, and I know that they're going to tape all of the sessions, so I can't wait to go back and be able to hear the ones that I missed. I hope you take advantage of this wonderful learning opportunity. Okay, so obviously challenges in leading during a traumatic time. How do we address those challenges effectively? I think some of the things that that I pull from what I just talked about, stay calm, don't be reactive. I had the opportunity to be not calm and to be reactive a lot of times during this. I had experience with lots of people being reactive and not calm. We can go so much further together if we work together and we realize that we have to be agile, we have to be flexible. We don't have all the answers, but we'll work together to get to them. And I really do think that in this particular traumatic time, that is really the way that we can go forward.
And I'm so sorry for my connection not coming in well. It's actually breaking up on my end as well. So are there any final thoughts that you would like?
I think my final thought for everyone is to be confident, to know that we're all in this together. You know, I had the opportunity to present a girls' state recently on leadership for high school juniors and seniors, female juniors and seniors. And I said to them, how are you all feeling right now? And they all were saying things like anxious and stressed and overwhelmed. And I said, the big secret is that we all feel the same way. And so we're all in this together. Just help to try and develop your own skills, your own strategies for how you can make it through and how you can lead others through, and develop that confidence in yourself and your own skills. And you can do hard things, and you've got this. It'll all work out.
Thank you. I will wait 1 more minute to see if any other questions come in. But at this time, I just would like to thank Dr. personally so much for our time and our expertise today. And thank everybody for joining us. If there aren't any more questions, or we welcome you to join us in the gallery area for lunch networking and a chance to visit our expo before joining our plenary session after lunch. And if you can use the hashtag Student Success West Virginia to share your experiences at the summit. Enjoy.